Before we start, just take this for what it is, an observation. You don't have to agree with it. You don't have to adopt it. Just listen to it the way you might listen to a thought that passes through your own mind, and decide later whether it's worth keeping. I've been thinking a lot about my thoughts lately, and something started to stand out to me. We've all had moments where a thought appears in our mind and we immediately recognize something strange about it. Maybe it's intrusive, maybe it's dark, maybe it's completely out of character. It shows up, and almost instantly you think to yourself, where the hell did that come from? Most people experience that at some point, and when it happens, we usually treat that thought as an exception, a stray thought, an odd one, something that doesn't represent who we are. But over the past few years, I started wondering something different. What if every thought should be treated that way? Not just the strange ones, but all of them. Because the more attention I paid to my own mind, the more it started to look like something else entirely. It didn't look like identity, it looked like processing. Almost like the brain was constantly throwing ideas out onto the floor of the conscious mind, not as facts or truths, just possibilities, suggestions, things to examine, things to discard. But somewhere along the way, most of us learn to assume something automatically. We learn to assume that every thought that appears in our heads belongs to us, that it represents us, that it says something about who we are. And I'm not sure that's true. Over the past few years, I've had plenty of thoughts appear in my mind that were emotionally charged, thoughts that I would never share, thoughts that didn't line up with the character I'm trying to build in myself. And instead of assuming those thoughts were me, I started looking at them differently. I started asking a simple question. Does this thought actually belong to the person I'm trying to become? Sometimes the answer was clearly no. And when that happened, I treated the thought the same way I'd treat a bad suggestion from someone else. I rejected it. Other times, a thought would appear that wasn't obviously right or wrong. Those were the ones I started sitting with, turning them over, looking at them from different angles, deciding whether they were actually worth agreeing with. And occasionally, a thought would appear that pointed towards something good, something aligned with a trait I wanted to develop, something like doing more charitable work or taking action in a way that reflected the person I'm trying to become. Those thoughts didn't just get entertained, they got acted on. And that's when I started noticing something interesting. A thought, by itself, has almost no structure. It's just an idea passing through. But the moment you start agreeing with it, believing it, investing attention in it, that's when it starts to solidify. That's when it turns into something heavier. Belief, emotion, action. Which means the real danger might not be the thoughts themselves. The real danger might be how quickly we assume ownership of them. Because if you pause for a moment and think about it honestly, what would happen if you believed every single thought that ever crossed your mind? Every assumption, every narrative, every emotional reaction, every dark or strange idea that shows up for a moment before disappearing. If you treated all of those as absolute truth, what kind of person would you become? You'd probably believe some pretty wild things. And that realization alone started changing the way I relate to my own mind. Because once you stop assuming that every thought is yours, you create space. Space to evaluate, space to choose, space to decide whether a thought deserves your agreement. And that's where something else becomes important. your emotions. Because while thoughts feel like suggestions, emotions feel different. Emotions happen in the present moment. They're signals. You feel them directly. Thoughts can influence them, absolutely. But the emotion itself is something real happening in your experience right now, which means the relationship between the two matters. Thoughts can pull your emotions in different directions, but that doesn't mean every thought deserves that kind of power. Sometimes the most responsible thing you can do is slow down before investing in a thought. Sit with it, look at it. If you need to, write it down. Take the time to weigh it honestly. Because once you agree with a thought, once you believe it, once you start acting on it, the thought stops being noise. It becomes something real in your life. And maybe the goal isn't to eliminate thoughts. That's probably impossible. Maybe the goal is simply to become more careful about which ones we allow to stay. Because our minds will produce thousands of thoughts every day, some useful, some destructive, some completely meaningless. And the more attention you pay, the more you realize something important. You don't have to accept all of them. You can sit with them first. You can examine them. You can decide whether they deserve your investment. And sometimes the best thing you can do when a thought appears is simply pause and ask yourself one quiet question. Is this actually me? Or something my mind is just trying to process?